The mining drill screamed against the crystal rock, sending bright sparks into the dark tunnel. Kim Tae-ho wiped sweat from his forehead as he watched the numbers on his control panel. Everything looked normal, but something felt wrong. After 8 years of mining work, he had learned to trust his gut feelings. "How much deeper do we need to go?" asked Neela-eth, the alien researcher standing beside him. Her blue-green skin glowed softly in the tunnel lights. She was tall and thin, with large eyes that never seemed to blink. The Veltari were smart people from across the galaxy, but they were also fragile. Much more fragile than humans. "Maybe 50 meters more," Tae-ho said, checking his readings again. "The crystal formation you want should be right there." Neela-eth nodded and made notes on her strange device. She had been studying these crystals for months. The Veltari said the crystals could help them make better energy sources. Tae-ho didn't understand the science, but he understood mining, and right now, his mining sense was telling him to be careful. The Kepler 442b mining station was a joint project. Humans provided the muscle and mining skills. The Veltari provided the advanced technology and scientific knowledge. It was supposed to be a fair trade, but Tae-ho often wondered if the aliens were getting the better deal. Humans did all the dangerous work while the Veltari stayed safe and studied their samples. "Tae-ho," called Park Dae-jin from across the tunnel. His friend was checking the support beams. "These readings are getting weird. The gas levels keep jumping up and down." Tae-ho frowned. Gas pockets were dangerous in any mine, but especially in alien mines where they didn't know what kind of gases might be hiding in the rocks. "What kind of readings?" "I'm not sure. Something I've never seen before." Dae-jin held up his scanner. The numbers were flashing red. Neela-eth looked up from her notes. "Perhaps we should stop for today. My research can wait." "No," Tae-ho said quickly. "We're so close to the crystal layer. Let me just check the drill settings." He was proud of his work and he wanted to finish the job right. The Veltari were counting on them and he didn't want to let them down. He walked over to the main drilling console and started adjusting the power settings. Maybe if he ran the drill slower, it would be safer. The gas readings were probably nothing serious anyway. They had safety equipment for a reason, but as soon as he touched the controls, everything went wrong. The drill hit something it shouldn't have. Instead of the steady grinding sound they were used to, there was a sharp crack like breaking glass. Then came a sound that made Tae-ho's blood freeze, a deep rumbling from somewhere far below them. "Get back," he shouted, but it was already too late. The explosion came from underneath them, shooting up through the drill hole like a rocket. The force threw Tae-ho backward against the tunnel wall. His ears rang and his vision blurred. Hot air filled the tunnel, making it hard to breathe. Then came the fragments. Pieces of superheated metal from the drilling equipment flew through the air like bullets. Some were as small as coins, others as big as dinner plates. All of them were glowing red-hot and moving fast enough to kill. Tae-ho saw Neela-eth in the middle of the tunnel. She was on the ground, probably thrown down by the explosion. Her large eyes were wide with fear as she looked up at the deadly rain falling toward her. The alien tried to move, but her long limbs were tangled in the cables that had fallen from the ceiling. She was trapped. The metal fragments were falling straight toward her, and she had no way to protect herself. Time seemed to slow down for Tae-ho. He could see every piece of burning metal as it fell. He could see the terror in Neela-eth's eyes. He could hear Dae-jin shouting somewhere behind him, but the words sounded far away and unclear. Tae-ho didn't think. He just moved. He threw himself forward, diving through the air toward Neela-eth. He landed on top of her just as the first fragments hit. The burning metal tore through his mining suit like it was made of paper. Pain shot through his back and shoulders as the hot shrapnel cut into his flesh. More fragments kept falling. Tae-ho pressed himself down over Neela-eth, trying to cover as much of her body as he could with his own. Each piece of metal that hit him felt like being stabbed with a red-hot knife. His suit's environmental system started failing, and he could smell his own burning skin. "Stay down," he whispered to Neela-eth, though he wasn't sure she could understand him through the pain in his voice. The alien's large eyes stared up at him. For the first time since he had known her, he saw something he had never seen from a Veltari before. Tears were flowing from her eyes, mixing with the dust and smoke in the air. "Why?" she whispered. "Why did you?" But Tae-ho couldn't answer. The world was getting dark around the edges. He could feel his blood soaking into the dirt beneath them. His strength was leaving him, but he kept his body pressed over hers, protecting her until the last fragment stopped falling. "Tae-ho!" Dae-jin's voice seemed to come from very far away. Medic, we need Lee Sora down here now. Teho tried to respond, but no words came out. He could feel Nilaeth moving beneath him, probably trying to check if he was still alive. He wanted to tell her he was okay, but his body wouldn't obey him anymore. The last thing he remembered was the feeling of her strange, long fingers touching his face gently. Her skin was cool against his burning cheek. She was saying something in her own language, words he couldn't understand, but her tone was soft and grateful. Then everything went black. As consciousness faded away, Teho felt oddly peaceful. The pain was disappearing, and he could hear voices around him, human and alien voices working together to help him. He had saved Nilaeth. That was what mattered. That was enough. He didn't know that his simple act of protection would change everything between humans and aliens forever. He didn't know that word of what he had done would spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. All he knew was that someone had needed help, and he had been there to give it. That was just what humans did. Teho's eyes opened slowly, like he was swimming up from the bottom of a deep, dark pool. The first thing he noticed was that everything looked wrong. The ceiling above him was curved and smooth, made of some kind of white material that seemed to glow with its own soft light. This wasn't the medical bay back at the mining station. He tried to sit up, but gentle hands pushed him back down. Not human hands. These were longer, with too many joints, and the skin felt cool and slightly damp. "Please rest," said a voice in perfect English, though the accent was strange. "You have been unconscious for 6 days." Teho turned his head and saw a Veltari he didn't recognize. This one wore robes that seemed to shift colors in the light. Behind the first alien, he could see others. Lots of others. The room was full of Veltari, all of them watching him with their large, unblinking eyes. "Where am I?" Teho's voice came out as a rough whisper. His throat felt like he had been breathing sand. "You are on Veltros Prime, our homeworld," the alien said. "I am Healer Kenthara. You were brought here for treatment that your species' medical facilities could not provide." Teho looked around the room again. It was huge, with a high ceiling and walls covered in symbols that seemed to move when he wasn't looking directly at them. But what shocked him most was seeing familiar faces among all the aliens. "Daejin?" he called out. His friend pushed through the crowd of Veltari and grabbed Teho's hand. Park Daejin looked tired and worried, but he was smiling. "You crazy fool," he said. "We thought we lost you." "We're all here," said another familiar voice. Lee Sora, the team medic, appeared beside his bed. Her eyes were red like she had been crying. "The whole human crew from the mining station. The Veltari brought all of us. Why?" Teho asked, confused. "I mean, thank you for the medical help, but why bring everyone?" Before anyone could answer, the crowd of aliens parted. A new figure walked toward his bed, Nilaeth. But she looked different now. Instead of her simple research clothes, she wore elaborate robes covered in intricate patterns. Her skin seemed to glow brighter than before, and there was something formal about the way she moved. "Because," Nilaeth said, stopping beside his bed, "what you did has never happened before in the history of our galaxy." Teho stared at her. "What I did? You were in trouble. Anyone would have done the same thing." Several Veltari in the room made sounds that might have been gasps. Nilaeth's eyes grew even larger if that was possible. "No," she said softly. "No, they would not." Healer Kenthara stepped forward. "In over 3,000 years of studying different species across the galaxy, we have never seen what you did. You had 0.3 seconds to react to the explosion. In that time, most beings would have protected themselves first. Some might have called out a warning. The very best might have tried to help after ensuring their own safety. But you," Nilaeth continued, "threw yourself into danger to protect someone from a completely different species. Someone you barely knew, without any thought for your own survival." Yunhai Jin, the communications officer, spoke up from somewhere in the crowd. "That's just normal, isn't it? I mean, that's what people do." The room filled with more of those gasping sounds from the Veltari. Healer Kenthara looked at the young human with something like wonder. "Your species continues to amaze us," the healer said. "Even now you speak of extraordinary sacrifice as if it were ordinary behavior." Teho was getting frustrated. "Look, I appreciate the medical care, but I don't understand what the big deal is. Someone needed help, so I helped. That's it." "That," said a new voice, "is exactly the point." Everyone in the room turned toward the entrance. An ancient Veltari was walking in, supported by 2 younger aliens. This one was different from the others. older, with skin that had faded to almost silver, and robes that seemed to be made of liquid starlight. "Elder Vilthanar," Neelaeth whispered, and Teho noticed that even she seemed nervous. The old alien approached the bed slowly. When he spoke, his voice was like wind through old trees. "Young human," Elder Vilthanar said, "do you know what we call beings who sacrifice themselves for others without thought of reward? Good people?" Teho guessed. "We call them extinct," the elder replied, "because in a galaxy where resources are limited and dangers are everywhere, species that put others before themselves usually do not survive long enough to reach the stars." Lee Sora stepped forward. "But that's not true. Humans have been taking care of each other for thousands of years. We wouldn't have made it this far if we only cared about ourselves." Elder Vilthanar's large eyes focused on her. "And that, healer of humans, is why your species is so remarkable. You have achieved interstellar travel not despite your tendency to sacrifice for others, but because of it." The elder moved closer to Teho's bed. "We have studied 847 different intelligent species. All of them follow the same basic pattern. They help members of their own group, they trade fairly with allies, and they protect themselves first in any dangerous situation. This is logical. This is how species survive. But not humans," Neelaeth added quietly. "Humans help strangers. Humans help enemies. Humans help people they will never see again, and who cannot possibly help them in return. This makes you either the most evolved species we have ever encountered," Elder Vilthanar continued, "or the most foolish. We brought your entire crew here to find out which." Teho looked around at his friends and colleagues. They all seemed as confused as he felt. "So what's the verdict?" asked Dae-Jin. The elder's expression was hard to read, but Teho thought he saw something that might have been a smile. "We are still deciding," Elder Vilthanar said. "But so far the evidence suggests that your foolishness might be exactly what our galaxy needs." He gestured to the other Veltari in the room. "These healers have been working day and night to save your life, young Teho. Not because they owe you anything, but because your actions have inspired them to be better than they were before." Teho felt overwhelmed. All he had wanted was to prevent Neelaeth from getting hurt. Now apparently his whole species was being judged based on what he had done. "I just did what felt right," he said finally. "Exactly," Elder Vilthanar replied. "And that may be the most important thing anyone has done in this galaxy for a very long time." 3 days later, Teho was strong enough to walk. The Veltari medical technology had worked miracles on his injuries. The burns were gone, and even the deepest cuts had healed completely. But the aliens seemed more interested. In studying his mind than his body, Elder Vilthanar had invited the human crew to see something he called the Gallery of Civilizations. Teho walked slowly through the massive halls, still getting used to being on his feet again. The building was enormous, with ceilings so high they disappeared into shadows. "This place holds the history of every intelligent species we have encountered," Neelaeth explained as they walked. She had stayed close to Teho since he woke up, like she was afraid he might disappear. Over 3,000 years of contact with different civilizations. The walls were covered with displays showing different alien species. Some looked almost human. Others were so strange that Teho couldn't even figure out how they moved or ate. Each display had information about their culture, their technology, and something called behavioral profiles. "Here," Elder Vilthanar said, stopping in front of a section marked altruistic response patterns. The old alien touched something on the wall, and the display changed to show charts and graphs. "This measures how different species react when faced with a choice between helping others and protecting themselves," the elder explained. "The blue sections show help given to family members. Green shows help given to their own species. Yellow is for allies. Red is for strangers." Teho looked at the charts. For most species, the red sections were tiny or completely missing. A few had small yellow sections, but all of them had large blue and green areas. "This makes sense," said Lee Sora. "Of course people help their families first." "Indeed," Elder Vilthanar agreed. "It is logical and practical. But now look at this." He touched the wall again and a new chart appeared. This one was different. It had much larger yellow and red sections. "This is humanity's profile, based on historical data from your own records and our observations," the elder said. Park Dae-Jin whistled low. "We help strangers that much?" You help strangers more than most species help their own families, Neelaeth said quietly. Your red section, aid given to completely unknown individuals who cannot possibly repay you, is larger than anything we have seen before. Yoon Hae-jin looked confused. But that's normal, isn't it? I mean, if someone needs help, you help them. That's just basic human decency. Elder Vilthanar made that sound again that Taeho was learning meant the Veltari were amazed. You keep saying this behavior is normal, but observe. The display changed again, showing what looked like video recordings. This is from the Kepler 442b mining station, recorded the day of the accident. Taeho watched himself on the screen, working at the drilling console. He saw the explosion happen, saw the fragments flying through the air, and then he watched himself dive toward Neelaeth. The explosion occurred at timestamp 14:23:07. Elder Vilthanar narrated. You began moving toward Neelaeth at 14:23:073. Total reaction time, 0.3 of a second. The video slowed down, showing Taeho's movement frame by frame. In those 0.3 of a second, you had time for exactly one thought, the elder continued. Most beings would think danger and move away from the threat. Some might think help and call out a warning, but your first and only thought was to put your body between the danger and Neelaeth. Taeho watched his own face on the screen. Even he could see there was no hesitation, no calculation, just immediate action. This is not learned behavior, Elder Vilthanar said. This is instinct. Your species has evolved to protect others as automatically as you protect yourselves. But why is that so strange? Asked Lee Sora. Humans have always worked together. We take care of our communities. Neelaeth was not part of your community, the elder pointed out. She was an alien from another world with different biology, different culture, different everything. Yet you treated her as if she were your own family. Neelaeth stepped closer to the display, her skin glowing brighter. May I tell them what this means for the galaxy? Elder Vilthanar nodded. For thousands of years, interspecies relations have been based on trade, Neelaeth began. We give you something, you give us something back. Everyone calculates what they get versus what they give up. It works, but it keeps everyone separate. She gestured to the charts on the wall. Every species thinks about their own survival first. This creates what we call stability through separation. Everyone stays safe by not getting too involved with others. But humans don't think like that, she continued. You form connections across species lines as easily as within your own species. This could change everything. Taeho was starting to understand. You're saying we might make other species less careful about protecting themselves? Or, Elder Vilthanar said, you might teach them that there are things more important than individual survival. Things worth sacrificing for. That could be wonderful, said Yoon Hae-jin. Or catastrophic, the elder replied. If species start acting more like humans, they might become vulnerable to those who would take advantage of their generosity. Park Dae-jin frowned. So what are you saying? That we should stop helping people? We are saying, Elder Vilthanar answered, that your species has a gift that could either uplift the entire galaxy or destroy the balance that has kept peace for millennia. We need to decide what to do with that knowledge. The room fell quiet. Taeho looked around at his friends, seeing his own worry reflected in their faces. None of them had asked to be responsible for galactic peace. What if we just go back to mining? Taeho asked. Keep doing our job, stay out of galactic politics. Neelaeth looked at him with those large, gentle eyes. Taeho, in the 3 days since you saved my life, 17 different species have sent representatives here to learn about humans. Word is spreading faster than we can control it. The galaxy already knows about you, Elder Vilthanar said. The question now is what they will do with that knowledge. Some will want to learn from you. Others will want to use you. And some will want to eliminate the threat you represent to their way of life. Threat? Lee Sora asked. We're not threatening anyone. Your very existence threatens the idea that selfishness is the only logical way to survive, the elder replied. Some species have built their entire civilizations on that principle. Taeho felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. All he had done was protect someone who needed help. How had that turned into a galactic crisis? So what happens now? He asked. Elder Vilthanar looked at each of the humans in turn. Now we find out if your gift can save the galaxy, or if the galaxy will destroy your gift first. Over the next week, strange things began happening around the Veltari medical complex. Small emergencies appeared everywhere the human crew went. A young Veltari student would drop their research materials just as Yoon Hae-jin walked by. An elderly alien would seem to struggle with a heavy door when Park Dae-jin was nearby. Lee Sora would encounter injured creatures that needed medical attention. At first, Taeho thought it was just bad luck. But after the 5th accident in 3 days, he started to suspect something else was going on. "They're testing us," he told Dae-jin as they walked through one of the complex's garden areas. The plants here were unlike anything on Earth, tall and crystalline, making soft music when the wind touched them. "I noticed that too," Dae-jin replied. "But here's the weird part. I don't think they're testing whether we'll help. I think they're testing how we help." As if summoned by their conversation, a small alien creature came running toward them, making distressed sounds. It looked like a cross between a bird and a lizard, with bright purple feathers and 6 legs. One of its wings was dragging on the ground. Without thinking, Taeho knelt down and gently picked up the creature. It was small enough to fit in his hands, and it seemed to calm down as soon as he touched it. "Hey there, little guy," he said softly. "What happened to your wing?" The creature made a chirping sound and tried to move its injured wing. Taeho could see it was definitely hurt, but not too badly. "Let's get you to Sora," he said, standing up carefully. "She'll know how to help." As they walked toward the medical section, Dae-jin pointed to a shadowy area between 2 buildings. "We're being watched." Taeho looked and saw several Veltari observing them from a distance. They were trying to be discreet, but they weren't very good at hiding. "Let them watch," Taeho said. He was getting tired of being studied like a laboratory specimen, but he understood why they were doing it. If their situations were reversed, humans would probably do the same thing. They found Lee Sora in her temporary medical station, a room the Veltari had set up with equipment from the mining station. She looked up from her notes when they entered. "Another patient?" she asked, not seeming surprised. "Injured wing," Taeho said, gently transferring the creature to Sora's examination table. As Sora worked to treat the small animal, Nilayeth appeared in the doorway. She watched quietly as the human medic carefully cleaned the wound and applied a bandage. "The interesting thing," Nilayeth said after Sora finished, "is that this creature is not actually native to Veltros Prime. It was brought here specifically for these encounters." Sora looked up from washing her hands. "So this was a test?" "Everything has been a test," Nilayeth admitted, "but not the kind of test you might think. We already know that humans will help others. That was established when Taeho saved my life. What we needed to understand was how you help." She gestured to the small creature, which was now sleeping peacefully in a soft nest Sora had made for it. "Most species help in ways that benefit themselves as well," Nilayeth continued. "They help because it makes them look good, or because they expect something in return, or because it serves their long-term interests." "And we don't?" Dae-jin asked. "You help because the being in front of you needs help," Nilayeth replied. "Nothing else seems to matter to you. Not whether you know them, not whether they can repay you. Not even whether they're the same species as you." Taeho thought about that. "Is that bad?" "It's unprecedented," Nilayeth said. "And it's changing everyone around you." Before anyone could ask what she meant, Yoon Hae-jin burst into the room looking excited. "You have to see this," he said. "Something amazing is happening in the main hall." They followed him through the corridors to the central gathering area of the complex. What they saw made them all stop in surprise. Dozens of Veltari were working together to help a group of visiting aliens from another species. These new aliens looked like walking trees, with bark-like skin and leaves instead of hair. Some of them seemed to be having trouble moving in the Veltari environment. But the remarkable thing wasn't that the Veltari were helping. It was how they were helping. Instead of their usual efficient professional assistance, they were being gentle and patient. They were taking time to understand what each tree alien needed. They were putting themselves in uncomfortable positions to make their guests more comfortable. "They're acting like us," Sora whispered. "It started 3 days ago," Nilayeth explained quietly. "After spending time observing humans, our people began changing their own behavior. They started noticing when others needed help. They started caring about the comfort of beings they had never met before. One of the tree aliens was struggling to reach something on a high shelf. A young Veltari immediately went to help, not just getting the item, but also rearranging things so the alien could reach them more easily in the future. This is what Elder Vilthanar was worried about," Nilayeth continued. "Your way of thinking is contagious. Other species are starting to act more like humans. Is that a problem? Taeho asked. Before Neelaeth could answer, a commotion started near the entrance to the hall. A group of new aliens had arrived. These ones looked more aggressive, with sharp features and dark clothing. They were arguing loudly with the Veltari at the reception area. What's going on? Daejin asked. Representatives from the Keth Empire, Neelaeth said, and her skin color shifted to a more muted tone. They have come to see the humans for themselves. The leader of the new group spotted them and strode over. He was tall and angular with silver skin and eyes that seemed to see everything at once. So these are the famous humans, he said in perfect English, though his voice sounded cold and mechanical. The ones who are supposedly changing how species interact. Taeho stepped forward. I'm Kim Taeho. Are you here to study us too? The alien's laugh was sharp and unpleasant. Study you? No, human. We are here to understand why so many species are suddenly acting irrationally. Helping each other isn't irrational, Sora said firmly. It is when it makes you weak, the alien replied. The Keth Empire has thrived for 5,000 years because we understand that survival requires strength, not sentiment. We do not waste resources on beings who cannot benefit us in return. That sounds like a lonely way to live, Yoon Haejin said quietly. The Keith leader's eyes focused on the young communications officer. Loneliness is a small price to pay for power. Your species' weakness for helping strangers will be your downfall. And yet, Elder Vilthaner said, appearing beside them as if from nowhere, they have survived to reach the stars, just as you have. Perhaps there is more than one path to success. The Keth leader turned to face the elder. We shall see, Ancient One. We shall see if their weakness can survive contact with the real galaxy. As the Keth delegation moved away, Taeho felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. What did he mean by that? He asked. Elder Vilthaner watched the departing aliens with troubled eyes. I fear we are about to find out. 2 weeks later, Taeho stood in the most important room he had ever entered. The Galactic Council chamber was enormous, with a ceiling that seemed to stretch up to the stars themselves. Representatives from dozens of species sat in curved rows, all of them focused on the small group of humans standing in the center. Elder Vilthaner had explained what was going to happen. The Veltari Council was going to make a formal proposal to change how species interacted with each other. They wanted to create something called the Mutual Aid Protocol, a system based on helping each other instead of just trading for mutual benefit. But first, they needed the galaxy to understand why this change was necessary. The human Kim Taeho will now share his experience, Elder Vilthaner announced to the assembled aliens. Taeho felt his mouth go dry. He had never spoken to more than a dozen people at once, and now hundreds of aliens from across the galaxy were waiting to hear what he had to say. I'm just a mining engineer, he began, his voice sounding small in the huge chamber. I'm not a diplomat or a philosopher. I fix machines and dig holes in the ground. Some of the aliens made sounds that might have been laughter, but not unkind laughter. 2 weeks ago, there was an accident at our mining station, he continued, gaining confidence. My friend Neelaeth was in danger and I tried to help her. That's all. I didn't think about politics or species relations or galactic peace. I just saw someone who needed help. He paused, looking around at all the different faces, some familiar like human faces, others so strange he couldn't even guess how they worked. I've learned that this was apparently unusual behavior, that most species don't help strangers from other worlds. But I can't understand why that would be unusual. Where I come from, if someone needs help and you can give it, you help. It doesn't matter who they are or where they're from. A delegate from near the back of the chamber stood up. This one looked like a giant insect with golden wings. But surely you expect something in return for this help. The insect alien asked, like what? Taeho replied, payment, favors, alliance agreements, political advantage. Taeho shook his head. No, nothing like that. The help itself is the point. Making sure someone is okay is the reward. More sounds rippled through the chamber. The insect alien sat down. Looking confused, another delegate stood up, one of the tree aliens they had seen at the medical complex. Since meeting the humans, this alien said in a voice like rustling leaves, my people have begun to change how we interact with others. We have started helping species we have never helped before. Our productivity has decreased, but our happiness has increased dramatically. That is exactly the problem, came a harsh voice from the other side of the chamber. The Keth delegate who had visited them before stood up, his silver skin gleaming under the chamber's lights. This happiness you speak of is a weakness that will be exploited by stronger species. And yet, Elder Vilthanar said, rising from his position at the front of the chamber, the humans have survived and prospered for thousands of years using exactly this approach. Perhaps strength comes in many forms. The Keth delegate laughed coldly. They prospered on a single world with only one species. The galaxy is far more dangerous, is it? Asked a new voice. Everyone turned to look at Nyla Eth, who had stood up from her seat among the Veltari delegation. She had changed since the mining accident. She seemed more confident, more willing to speak up. Is the galaxy dangerous because it contains dangerous things? She continued. Or is it dangerous because we make it dangerous by refusing to trust each other? She walked toward the center of the chamber, her robes flowing behind her. For 3,000 years, we have built our civilization on the idea that other species are potential threats to be managed through careful treaties and limited cooperation. We help our allies when it benefits us, and we avoid our enemies when we can. She stopped next to Taiho. But this human saved my life for no reason other than that I needed saving. And in doing so, he showed us a different way to exist. A weaker way, the Keth delegate insisted. Is it weaker? Nilaeth challenged. In the 2 weeks since the humans arrived on our world, productivity in our research facilities has increased by 40%. Not because people are working harder, but because they are working together better. Species that have never cooperated before are now sharing resources and knowledge. Freely, she gestured to the gallery where other aliens were watching the proceedings. Representatives from 17 different civilizations have come here to learn about the human approach to interspecies relations. They are not here because they want to become weak. They are here because they want to become something better than they are now. Elder Vilthanar stepped forward. The Veltari Council proposes that we establish a new framework for galactic cooperation. We suggest creating the Taiho Protocol, named for the human who showed us what selfless cooperation looks like. The chamber erupted in sounds, some approving, others clearly opposed. This protocol would not replace existing treaties, the elder continued when the noise died down. It would simply provide a structure for species who wish to interact based on mutual aid rather than mutual benefit. And what would stop aggressive species from taking advantage of this cooperation? Asked a delegate that looked like a living crystal formation. The same thing that stops them now, Elder Vilthanar replied. The knowledge that cooperation creates strength, and that those who abuse trust will find themselves isolated. Lee Sora stepped forward from where she had been standing with the other humans. May I say something? She asked. Elder Vilthanar nodded. I've been thinking about what makes humans different, Sora said, and I think it's not that we're naturally more generous or more noble than other species. I think it's that we learned early in our history that taking care of each other was the only way to survive. She looked around the chamber. Humans are actually pretty fragile compared to most species here. We don't have thick armor or natural weapons or advanced technology built into our bodies. What we have is each other. We survived by working together, by helping each other, by making sure that everyone in our community was okay. So you're saying cooperation is a survival strategy? Asked the crystal alien. I'm saying cooperation is the survival strategy, Sora replied. Not just for humans, but for anyone who wants to build something better than what they could build alone. The Keth delegate stood again. Pretty words, but the galaxy will test your philosophy soon enough. There are threats out there that cooperation cannot defeat. Then we'll face them together, Tejo said simply. That's what cooperation means. For a moment, the chamber was completely silent. Then slowly, delegates began to stand. First the tree aliens, then the insect people, then others. Not all of them. The Keth delegates remained seated, along with several other groups, but more than half the chamber was on their feet. The proposal is accepted for trial implementation, Elder Vilthanar announced. Those species who wish to participate in the Taiho Protocol may do so. Those who prefer existing arrangements may continue with them. As the formal session ended and delegates began to file out, Nilaeth approached Taiho. How do you feel about having a galactic protocol named after you? She asked. Taiho laughed. Honestly? I still can't believe this all started because I didn't want you to get hurt. That, Nilaeth said, her skin glowing warmly, is exactly why it will work. 3 months later, Tejo was back where he started, in a mining tunnel working with drilling equipment. But everything else had changed. The Kepler 442b mining station had been converted into the first interspecies cooperation training center. Instead of just humans and Veltari, there were now beings from 12 different worlds working and learning together. "Tejo," called a voice from across the tunnel. It was one of the new trainees, a young being from a species that looked like walking coral formations. "The drill is making that sound again." Tejo smiled and walked over to help. "Let's take a look." As he worked to adjust the equipment, he noticed something that would have seemed impossible just a few months ago. When a minor shower of sparks fell from the ceiling, 3 different aliens immediately moved to shield their classmates from potential harm. Neelaeth appeared beside him, carrying a data tablet. "The cooperation protocols are working better than we hoped," she reported. "Productivity is up, accidents are down, and most importantly, satisfaction ratings from all species are at record highs." "That's good," Tejo said, focused on his work. "Hand me that wrench, would you?" As Neelaeth passed him the tool, she smiled. "You know, you're probably the most famous being in the galaxy right now. There are species on the other side of the galaxy who know your name." Tejo shrugged. "That's nice. But right now we've got a drill to fix and new students to train." And as he worked, surrounded by beings from across the galaxy, who were learning that helping each other made everyone stronger, Tejo felt the same quiet satisfaction he had always felt when doing a job well. Some things, he thought, never needed to change.